Okay, fine, but he makes up for the supermodels that weigh 92 pounds on a heavy day, okay, where you can fit probably 5 of them in one of these checker squares. So let's just give everybody an average of 1 checker square of 2 feet by 2 feet, 4 square feet to stand in. If you do that, you can fit all 310 million Americans. Are you ready for this? Not just in the state of Michigan, not just in Metro Detroit, but you can fit them in this block from Woodward to Van Dyke between 8 Mile and 15 Mile. So think of a map. You got Woodward on the west, you have Van Dyke on the east, you have 8 Mile on the south, you have 15 Mile on the north. That block, if we made a checkerboard of that block and each square of the checkerboard was 4 square feet, 2 feet by 2 feet, you get all 310 million people in there. Now the math was a little bit tricky because Woodward runs northwest, southeast. It runs at an angle. So it took me a little bit of extra work to make that happen, okay, to figure it out. But I wanted to use Woodward because it's a very well-known street for all of us here in Metro Detroit. I thought about, well, let's see, I could do Livernois or something like that, and it runs north-south, but I wanted to do a main street that everybody knows where Woodward is, everybody knows where Van Dyke is, everybody knows where 8 Mile is, so you can kind of figure out where 15 Mile is, all right? But in that block, yeah, turn it into one big checkerboard, all 310 million people. Now, what I want you to do, now when I give you these numbers, next time you see a globe, you know one of those big globes of the earth, right? Here's what you do with one of those big globes. Next time you see one, get it and turn it and look at the United States. And then when you look at the United States, get out a little pencil and zero in to where Metro Detroit would be. And when you zero into Metro Detroit, just make a tiny little dot that would be basically this block that I just shared with you, 8 Mile to 15 Mile between Woodward and Van Dyke. Okay, just a tiny little dot, and then sit back and look at the entire map of the United States, and then think to yourself, wait a minute, every human being can be in that tiny little dot that I need a magnifying glass to be able to see, and there's all the rest of this land, and I'm going to hear that we're overpopulated? Now, folks, I understand people are going to say, well, yeah, but Bob, you can't live your life every day in a 2 foot by 2 foot checkerboard square. You need land, you need to produce, you need roads, you need... I'm not denying any of that, folks, okay? What I'm pointing out to you is, by this visual representation, I think you can see that there is plenty of land to do all the other stuff that we need to do, and all the other stuff that we need to create. This overpopulation myth is exactly that. It's a flat-out myth. Oh, I know there's horrible poverty around the world. Believe me, I get it. We talk about it on this show all the time. I ask you folks to sponsor Compassion International Children all the time for that very reason. But you need to know, most of the reason why you have severe poverty in third world nations around the globe, most of the reason why, it's not because there's not enough food, it's not because there's not enough water, it's because you have corrupt governments that take all the money for themselves and build bigger palaces for their monarchs and for their kings and for their dictators and everybody else. And then you have drug cartels and kingpins and such that are taking a bunch of the money and they're just leaving everybody else in poverty. Combined with, you have socialistic models of the government will be the controller of everything and all of the money, and they'll just dole out what little bit of money they can here and there. So they perpetuate a lot of poverty around the world. And it's a horrendous thing. People have to live in that. But it's not because, oh, we don't have enough land and we don't have enough water and we don't have enough food and there's just not enough of this. That's one of the reasons why, folks, we support these Christian ministries like Compassion. I mean, you'll hear me talking about them through the day, but that's one of the reasons why. What we do is we bypass the government to go right into the people and say, look, government's keeping all of the money that comes into your nation. Really, the ideal thing would be for these nations to have free market systems set up, but so many of them don't. So let us come in and, at least in the name of Christ, give you some clothing, give you some clean drinking water, give you some food, and care for you. But I'm just telling you, don't fall for the overpopulation myth, folks. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, is this really true? Can I trust Bob's numbers? Some of you listening right now might be like, oh, I have a hard time believing this. There's no way you can fit all 310 million people between Woodward and Van Dyke, between 8 Mile and 15 Mile. No way you can do that. Okay, let me give you the math, okay? And you can get your own calculator out. Check my numbers if you want to. Any mathematicians out there? I'm not a mathematician, I totally admit. And it was kind of late last night, and I was blurry-eyed when I was punching the calculator, so maybe I made a mistake, but I don't think so. Okay? Here's the math. 1 square mile is... How many square feet are there in 1 square mile? Well, I calculated that out. There's 27,878,400 square feet in 1 square mile. So, if we're going to give each person 4 square feet, then you got to divide that by 4. So if you divide 27,878,400 square feet, if you divide that by 4, then that means that there are 6,969,600 people per square mile. So 1 square mile turned into a checkerboard of 4 by 4 or 2 foot by 2 foot, 4 foot squares. 1 square mile would hold 6.9, just under 7 million people. 6,969,600 people in 1 square mile. So the block that I just gave you from Woodward to Van Dyke, 8 Mile to 15 Mile, is approximately 45 square miles. So just do the math. 45 square miles times 6,969,600 people per square mile ends up being 313,632,000 people. So in that block that I gave you, you can fit 313.6 million. But the population of the Earth is only 310 million. So we still got